Hello and welcome everyone to the Driving Loaded podcast, where two former Army Rangers provide insight to their life post-military, a unique perspective on life, family, and careers. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. All right, welcome back everyone to the Driving Loaded podcast. I'm your host Pete, and I'm joined by Jordan Hillstrom across the way there, just as the bird flies a couple of miles. So today we're going to talk about the suck and how it relates to our lives. And so how was your weekend, my friend? I know you're still dealing with some sickness issues and all those things.
Yeah, Doc says I got the black lung too, so we've been playing with the pneumonia for about 3 weeks now as a family. But hey, I don't know if we should leave our listeners too long on the segue into the topic today with the suck. There might be some out there that aren't quite sure what you're leaning towards.
Hey man, that's how I come in like a wrecking ball. Isn't that what that Miley or whatever her name is said?
Taylor Swift, Miley, Gaga. Yeah. I don't one of the yes something.
Yeah, Bruce Jenner, whatever. Cool. I'm sorry, folks. I'm coming in hard in the paint, as they say.
Yeah.
So black lung.
So black lung. Yeah. No, we're doing good. I mean, I was thinking about it. I went to the doctors over the weekend. I went to a brand new clinic in town at the Vancouver clinic. Amazing clinic. The technology and just the provider was pretty good too. But he mentioned something like, "Oh, I'm so sorry you have to deal with this," and I appreciated the bedside manner, the empathy he displayed. But I got to thinking, as much as this sucks, how blessed we are in America to be able to go and drive 20 minutes, some people even closer, to a medical provider and get medication to take care of pneumonia. You think about so much of the globe still doesn't have access to current modern medicine, and if they do, it's potentially days travel. If they're going to get medication at all, they might get some kind of local homegrown type stuff that may or may not take care of the ailment. So I mentioned that to him, like, I appreciate that, but at the same time we're such a blessed country that I want to keep perspective of what we have and what we've been given. So yeah, it's not fun to deal with it, but it could be a lot worse for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we take it for granted that we have the modern medicine, the convenience of just going down to the clinic. My last job in the military, I worked at the International Military Student Office on Fort Benning, and I handled all the incoming studs that were going to Ranger School. And so, I'm chatting back and forth with these guys, and pretty much all of them are like, dude, you guys have amazing benefits in the Army. Like, they're talking about their medical care, their family's medical care, and just like you had just mentioned, it is not great, and that made me really appreciate not only the military and all the great benefits that we are afforded. It just being able to just go to the doctor and be like, hey, I'm sick, I got the black lung, I need some meds. It's not that easy for them out there.
Totally agree with that. How was your weekend?
Dude, well, my weekend was busy as always because my daughter does everything and wants to do everything. So, we had a recital, I guess, if you want to call it that, for ice skating. We went to a hospital where they do a tree lighting every year, and my daughter's class was singing some Christmas songs there for the tree lighting. And then right after that, we went to watch the River Dragons, the local hockey team, play. They lost by 1, but still lots of fun. I love spending that kind of time with my family. I had a fire this weekend, and just, it's always busy, but I enjoy it. I'm glad I get to spend time with my family and, watch some Ranger TV in the backyard, have some s'mores.
Yeah, I saw that video. That was pretty sweet. Odd question. I saw a picture over the weekend. It must have been at the hockey game, I'm assuming, of you, your wife, and your daughter.
Yes.
What kind of camera was that taken on?
So I coughed up the money for an iPhone 11, not the Pro model. I don't have the 3-barrel. I got the double barrel. By double barrel, I mean the 2 cameras on the back. Yeah, so I bought the phone and everything, treated myself, and I'm just using the portrait mode on that thing.
Right on. No, that was I was looking at that photo because I'm getting into photography more recently than I had in the past, and I noticed on there, you're dealing with a lot of different, elements. You have many people in the crowd, you have lighting issues, the angle it was at, but I thought it was a great photo, especially with the phone. Technology is crazy with how good of a photo that was from just a, portrait by yourself, grabbing the shot without someone else taking it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that what our phones are. It's a computer, it's a GPS, it's an iPod, it's an MP3 player. It's a really, really nice camera because the camera that is used the most, or number one camera in the world, is the iPhone, not a DSLR or anything like that. So it's crazy because everybody, their phone is always in their hand and they're always snapping pictures and all that stuff. So yeah, great phone.
I love the iPhone and the photography it can take. I know some of the other platforms out there are great too. I do love the DSLR that I have. I think the biggest problem though is once you take a picture, you usually got to bring it into some kind of studio and make it viewable, I guess, or manipulate it to be able to get it on social or whatever. So just the time it takes and everything else, it kind of is a deterrent for me to grab that every time we go out somewhere.
Yeah, that's one of my jobs in the military. We were heavily involved with, cameras, DSLRs and whatnot, and we took some courses on manipulating, the photos and all that stuff. There's just a lot of data, and it is a lot of work. And there's some programs that'll kind of auto tune it basically for you. So, yeah, but it's just easy with the iPhone, man. It's in your hand. Snap some photos, throw it up on social, let the family see it.
Heck yeah, no, I agree. So I was sitting in my sauna over the weekend. It's usually where my thought of the week kind of comes from, and something that I've been kind of stewing on a little bit is, and this is me being transparent and open, struggles in life and then struggles in business. And I was thinking about my time in the military, different schools I went through, whether it be even basic training, airborne school, RIP, Ranger Doctrination program. Ranger school, staying in battalion. There's a lot of elements that I was thinking of, like what was the factor, what was the big thing that helped me stay mindful of my situation, and how did I push through adversity as it came, and why that's important right now while I'm trying to draw on those strengths that I had then is because in business, we're in this entrepreneurial avenue now with Load Tracks. I do believe Load Tracks is a phenomenal idea. I think we executed on the idea and the thought quite well. We went to market. We got feedback from the market multiple times and went back to the developers and had things manipulated, changed, altered to fit the specifications of our end users. So we're actually listening to the market, moving with the market to make sure we're not just building some theory, but we're building some that's actionable and usable by the end client. And something that I'm kind of struggling through now is when you're dealing with technology, like you said, and we're in an early adopter market right now. Something that I'm struggling with is we know we have a good platform, we know it works phenomenally, we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community that is using it, and it's good. And then you go out and you're selling the product, right? And we're still a startup, so we don't have a ton of resources like some would have. So we're bootstrapping a lot of the elements of this process. And you get a lot of feedback from people like, oh, this is awesome, I love the way you guys are going. And then you get kind of ghosted in the process. So there's definitely frustrations of, learning some of these things and going through the life cycle of, just because you have a cool technology doesn't mean it's going to be easily, absorbed into the community as a whole. Because it Absolutely. Is something. it is something new where we have most of the industry is still on carbon copies. So yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking today, spending some time talking about, the idea of intestinal fortitude, or the suck, as you would kind of refer to, what it takes to get the intestinal fortitude is what it takes to get through the suck. So yeah, I want to kind of spend some time here, see what your infinite wisdom here has to say about that.
Well, I don't think it's infinite, but I may have a few words of wisdom. Yeah, and I think that I was like I said before we came on, doing a survey. I was talking to a buddy of mine actually this morning about this, because I'd been wondering about this lately myself. Intestinal fortitude, you generally don't hear that in the civilian populace. At least I don't think so. I've been in the military so long that it's common language. And so what we were talking about was, where does it come from? Where does that intestinal fortitude, that drive, or that that ability to keep going, through adversity, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. And we kind of, as far as the physical part, we kind of came, to the same point, like, hey man, that's how we were raised. I was raised not to give up and to never quit. And, my dad, I've seen it firsthand. He went through a lot of difficult times, like we talked about. We lived in a house trailer, mobile home with holes in the floor. That was our house. And so it was always an uphill battle. And it didn't matter what happened or what was going on in life, my dad never, ever gave up. The dude, he just won't quit. And I think I absorbed some of that, thankfully, from him. And I that's where I learned, hey man, it doesn't matter what happens, you pick yourself up, and there's always a way. You can figure it out. And I think that translates not only in the military, but throughout your life. Like Ranger School, the Army's premier leadership course, the success rate is 40%. And there's only about 20-something% that go straight through Ranger School. And so there's a lot of days where you're tired, you're hungry, and you're just like, dude, I don't want to do this crap anymore. And you can always tap out. But there's something inside those people, myself, yourself, that said, hey, look, man, I'm not going to give up, dude. This sucks. I'm cold. I'm hungry. I'm wet. This dude, my guys aren't listening to me. We just got to make it happen. And we keep doing it. And I my opinion is that not everybody is born with that. What do you think?
So I struggle with that, because you see some people that have, rough upbringings, very, that a lot of adversity was thrown at them at a young age. They had to push through. So then as an adult, you become just, thick-skinned. You have the ability to drive through a lot of issues. In the same time, you get people that are like, more of a cush upbringing, and they don't seem to have a lot of, backbone or intestinal fortitude. But it seems like, push comes to shove, they're able to grasp from something to push through. So I wonder that, like, is that something you can learn? Can you grow that, or is it something that you have it or you don't? And I guess, looking at, like, let's say shooting skills back in State Patrol Academy, there was some people that never, ever shot a gun before, ever. And in pistol range training on, like, State Patrol, like for law enforcement, it's very, especially at the beginning and still almost through the end, it's very static, meaning you go online and you have very strategic shot placements you're supposed to place. And at the end, it does get timed, but it's very slow. And what the whole goal is to get you working through the fundamentals of marksmanship. And I'm not ashamed to admit this. There was people that never touched a gun, literally, ever before in their life at the State Patrol Academy, which was kind of mind-blowing to me. In fact, I was actually biased, like, towards that being a bad idea. But there was a couple that shot much better than I did with the pistol in a static, dynamic environment, because they had the intellectual ability to grasp fundamentals and apply them. So on a range in a static setting, they did better. They shot better than I did. However, you put them in a dynamic setting and you add stress to the picture, my ability to perform was better than theirs. Whether it be because I've had, environments like the military combat zone type that help me understand how to deal with stress and overcome the stress using muscle memory and the training. You kind of refer back to that. With shooting, it's relatively similar. And I do think that there's an ability for some people to train themselves through repetition and through practice to potentially gain some of these skills that seemingly come so naturally.
Yeah, and that is, that was at the tail end of our conversation I had with my friend this morning, and he said that the Army does a pretty good job of setting you up for success. Like, so you go through, for us, it was basic training. They teach you how to be an infantryman. You go to AIT and all that stuff, and then we went to RIP and we just got our, nuts smoked off for, a month, and they, not much training there. But when you get to your, Ranger Battalion, you suck it up. Through that, you just don't quit. And then you get to your Ranger Battalion and you're the TAP Spec 4s, the E4s that have been to Ranger School, they're the ones that it's their job to train you as a brand new private, to scuff you up and then train you in the small unit tactics, the Ranger tactics. And so we actually get set up to go to Ranger School pretty well. But then you're at like the 5-yard line. You gotta make the touchdown. That touchdown is you. That's all you. You got to close the distance. And so I think, some of it can be trained. Some of it can be taught. But I think some people they have it. They're not going to quit no matter what. You're going to have to break every bone in their body. I'll pat myself on the back here. I broke my foot in the mountains, and I was like, dude, I can't stop. I'm not going to go home without my Ranger tab, and I would not quit. And, I went through Florida as well with a broken foot, and boom, it paid off. So I was definitely set up for success, though, from, my team leader, squad leader, and all that. So I think part of it can be taught, but I think a lot of it is kind of in that person.
No, that definitely makes sense, and I wouldn't, I guess, give too much pushback to that. But I do think there's attributes of, intestinal fortitude that can be learned, but I do think there's some of it that just becomes inherent to certain individuals. And you see even like different people, like people that are, how to describe this, like Finnish people, and by nature, you got a very stubborn people group. They call it sisu, from where I'm from in the Finnish culture, and that literally is like the intestinal fortitude, and it literally is the stomach, the ability to drive through very adverse situations. And so, looking back into like even my Ranger School experience, I recycled Florida phase or swamp phase, and the reason for why we got recycled, the whole squad did, and they said we were too arrogant or too cocky, and they were right. I mean, they weren't wrong by any means, but because the reason why I got recycled didn't feel like it was justified. So in my mind, I was mentally broke already. So I was like, I'm done. I'm quitting. So literally get like a day to use phones and stuff or whatever. And I was single then, called back to my parents because they were kind of curious about like graduation and whatnot, trying to get their tickets purchased to come down there or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
So I told them, hey, I recycled and I'm quitting. Like, in my mind, that's where I was at that point. And I remember my mom saying, I don't quit. You don't know why certain things happen in your life, but don't quit because you're going to regret it the rest of your life. And she's like, you know what, you don't know why, in my faith, I believe that God's got a purpose for certain things, and maybe that's not yours, and that's fine. But my belief system says that there's certain things that happen with or without my control, or within, my purview of being able to facilitate an end result or not. So that being said, I did push through, and I'm, super ecstatic that I did, because it did dictate, the rest of my military time and playing out today, even in business and other areas. If I would have quit then, what other areas would I have quit in life? I mean, what other sections that I pushed through after that I would have had the ability in my mind to just stop and just say, I can quit. It's not a big deal. So that's one thing I'll say is like a support system around you that holds you accountable for your actions. Even if I had parents, I just said, you know what, you can quit whatever you want, and we're going to view you the same. Like, I don't know if I'd be the same person today, but they have pushed me throughout the years.
Yeah, and that's I think that having the good parents that we have religiously and with the way they raised us and with the rules and the guidelines that we had, and I kind of looked at it the same way. Like I cannot give up or quit because my family's counting on me. Even though I didn't really ever tell my family a whole lot about what I do in the military, but I mean, they could put the pieces together. They could do a little Google search and whatnot. And so they had an idea, but for me, it was, a pride thing. So part of it is pride for me. I was proud to complete Ranger School. And then, several years later, I decided, after I'd been in 2nd Ranger Battalion for about 4 years, I decided to go to the 75th Ranger Regiment Regimental Reconnaissance selection. And that one, you're by yourself, so you're not in a squad or anything like that. And that was a huge gut check for me. And I kind of carried that over into that selection. There's days where I'm like, dude, I don't want to do this crap anymore. Like, I cannot do this. And I'm like, well, I know my dad would never give up. And if my dad or my brothers were here, they'd say, are you dead? No. Okay, then why are you sitting here sulking? Like, get your ass up and put one foot in front of the other and go. And that's what I did. I just kept going. I just wouldn't stop, and I can, I thank my family and my dad, and, I had great examples. And so, and, I didn't get a trophy for everything I did when I grew up. I had to earn what I wanted. I'm like, hey, I want to achieve this goal. I have to go out and achieve it. I don't get a trophy for just showing up. So I think maybe that part of that is, what helped me to continue on and push through not just selections and whatnot, but other difficulties that I had throughout life in the military and personal struggles, with addiction and whatnot. So I had to kind of take back from years past and pull all that up and say, hey, look, my family's counting on me. And so I need to be a good dude, be a good father, be a good husband, be a good son, be a good brother. So, but I mean, sorry, I went on a little rant there, but, just kind of give some context to dealing with adverse conditions.
No, I think that all plays right into the conversation that we're having right now. And I think, I'm no scholar at the idea of football and the red zone, but I watch a lot of football, contrary to all that Colin Kaepernick crap and whatnot. Like, I'm not letting him dictate my ability to appreciate a sport,
No.
whether it be NFL, college, whatever. The sport itself is kind of like whatever, but what I do appreciate out of football is these guys and the hours they put in prior to the game. And you don't see that. You don't see the practice it takes. So when they're executing these plays, if you watch it, you might wonder, like, why did the quarterback throw the ball where he did? There's nobody around. Well, they're using cadences, they're using time and using space, they're using plays that are predetermined prior to the ball being thrown, that guy is supposed to be on the X, right? So we know that they're practicing for hours and hours and hours to execute these plays. But you look at the red zone, it seems like that is one area that some teams are phenomenal at executing in the red zone. The most pressure, your space is limited, everything is choked down, the pressure is heightened. Some teams do a lot better job executing there, and then you start to break that down. Well, why do they do a better job versus the other teams? And you look at some of the plays they throw, and you look at the quarterback and the leadership skills they have. And some of those quarterbacks have just a phenomenal job at staying calm under pressure and executing on those plays. And so I look at, Ranger School and other military schools that I went to, and, there was some external factors that did help. But I know a lot of that at the 5-yard line, the 1-yard line, when I wanted to quit, the time was already put in prior to that. In my mind, the mental game had already been played out. I wasn't going to allow myself to quit when I had the ability to quit. So it wasn't like I was making determination there. I had conditioned my mind and my heart to not be a quitter prior to. Like I've always pushed super hard. And for me personally, I think I'm a smaller guy, so I always had to scrap a little bit harder to keep up with my peer group because I have been shorter. Some guys call it what do they call that, short man syndrome or something, something like that. Vertically challenged. But even the idea of having to overcome the ability of being smaller in life in general is, I know our culture now says everything should be equal and PC, but at the end of the day, that doesn't erase my history. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. So there had to be this ability to fight through anything I dealt with my entire life because I was smaller. But I didn't let that determine the outcome, though. That was a difference. So, looking at football and the same analogy plays out, these guys aren't just executing on a Sunday or Thursday, whatever games they are playing nowadays. They're putting in the time, the years in advance to be able to execute these plays when the pressure's on, when it gets to the 5-yard line, the 1-yard line. These are the plays that count the most, but sometimes the hardest to execute on. And that's something I'm seeing the same thing in business now. It's something new to us. It's something new to me. We have this phenomenal idea. We're executing on it now. And the time's been put in. We've been doing the prep work. We've been doing the research. We've been, the prep work has been put in. And we're at the 1-yard line right now. We have a phenomenal product. We're in an early adopter market. But there's some things that are just the pressure is on right now. The capital to get to where we're at is it's costly. It doesn't come without a cost. So now, there's a lot of pressure to say, okay, where is the return on investment now? So whether it's a direct comment or it's because we know that the speed to market with a product like this to not just be first, but to be right and to do it, where your customer base feels that you are a long-term player in this space. There's so many dynamics that come into play here that I do believe we're going to be a long-time contender, but that doesn't take some of the real pressures that you feel as a business owner, as a co-founder of a SaaS company. So I'm trying to bridge the gap here on what helped me overcome these obstacles and hurdles in the military to help apply them here in the business world. And, over the weekend, I was talking to my younger brother, Kirk, and he's got a buddy, I won't say his name today, but he owns this company. And I think the idea is brilliant. They're like these barrel saunas they're on a trailer and you can rent them. Mm-hmm. And I think what he's doing is phenomenal. I think if he keeps growing, keeps pushing past some of these early business stage issues, I think he's onto something pretty sweet. Anyway, so I heard that he's having some second thoughts if he wants to keep pursuing this. I don't know if it's a lifetime dream of his or whatever, but the idea of quitting is apparently on the horizons, as a potential option. And so, and not just him, but I know other people as well. They're in the same, they're pushing after a dream of theirs, a business, whatever it might be, and they're so close to victory, and they end up folding their cards at the last second. And if you looked from an external 30,000 foot view, then you looked at his life objectively, you're like, dude, this is short term. You're feeling a lot of pressure, but if we can help maybe emulate some of these tangible things that we had, these skill sets we had, and help honing them in for other people, maybe they'll be able to pull some of this out of us and also be successful with the 1-yard line, the 5-yard line pressures.
Excuse me. So that's very interesting, that you see that, and obviously you said, you talked about you're having that kind of happen with load tracks, and you're right there. It's right there at the 1-yard line, and I mean you're absolutely correct. This is the make or break kind of point, and your buddy is kind of at that point, but so how do you translate what we've gone through in the military to now a business environment where we're applying those same, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to keep pushing forward attitude, that resilience? It's like, how do we translate that? Because I know that there's tons of people out there, small business owners that are struggling as well, with some of the same issues. So how do we how do we translate that? That's my question, because I if they would ask me, I'd be like, just don't quit, just keep going, wake up, um, like it's just don't quit. And so that's not always the answer. You know, we want to have a better answer, something that we can actually use to say, hey, I did, or talk to somebody that's been through those, hurdles, or had those issues, or, had those problems with their business. I think that we could learn a great deal from them. If we put our heads together, we can have some really good results, and really some really good information could come out of that, I think.
Couldn't agree more with that. A thought just occurred to me that I've had these conversations with multiple different, either their clients now, or they're in the process, and we've talked to them, through a sales vessel or whatever, or venue rather. But I've heard this overlapping, or this overarching theme quite a few times play out, and the theory of, or the idea of, we're just a small company, we're just a small mom and pop shop, we're just a family-run company. That plays out all too often, and the way they're saying it is almost like in a defensive posture. And they're not downplaying their abilities. They're not downplaying that they have something to offer, but it's just this, they feel almost hopeless to a certain regard when it comes to competition. And I think that mindset right there is something that, we were recycled in Ranger School because we were too cocky. As a team, as a unit, we were very strong together. We were all sucking, but we all sucked together, and we helped push each other through. And because of that, we came off as very arrogant. And honestly, I think some of that arrogance is what helps us succeed in the Ranger community or the special operations community. As you come off across as very, you're so hard charging, you're so driven that by a lot of the peer groups that aren't in that same frame of thought, frame of mind, they perceive you as an arrogant individual. And yes, I can understand the optics of that, but that is what drives those individuals like us to excel. And I think in business, you see some of these companies that provide a phenomenal service with excellence, and their customer service is phenomenal. But the mentality is they have to shift their mind to say, instead of we're just the small mom and pop shop, no, we are the mom and pop shop. America is built upon companies just like yours. You have so much more strength if you understood the skill sets that you actually hold on to right now, and the fact that this country would not survive economically if we did not have companies like yours at the scale that we do. And so I think some of it is just stuck in your lane, stuck in your purview of this is what I know, and you get this small-minded mindset, this almost like poverty mindset, because you only know so much. You get beat down by these thoughts, and I get there's going to be some tough days, but if you looked around and say the masses have some of the same issues that I'm dealing with, I'm no different than they are. I'm just as capable of the next guy to keep, pulling my pants on every day, go through that process. But the mind shift that I am capable, that I am a winner, that I am that I'm supposed to be victorious in this area, instead of the defeatist attitude, almost walking into the day. I think that's something that I kind of would see as some of these companies, and why the thought of failure is always kind of seemingly present.
Yeah, I think that hits the nail right on the head. Through some of the podcasts I've listened to, Eric Thomas being one of them, he's saying that don't let someone else dictate, your day-to-day, your future. You're the one that dictates that, not anybody else. And don't be shaped by someone else. You're the one that's in charge of your shape and how you will be shaped throughout your life. So it's yours. Go out and take it. And you're absolutely correct. This country was founded on small mom and pop shops and small businesses, and we have to have those. And if everybody just quit, then where are we? And I wouldn't doubt that a majority of these small businesses fail because their heart wasn't in it long enough. They weren't resilient enough. They didn't say, hey, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. And even if you have a small business that, maybe that one didn't succeed, but then you discovered another one and oh man, I'm going to provide this product or this service, and that flourishes. don't let one speed bump like that get in your way. It's everything doesn't just happen on your first go. You don't get to go at this station for that, at your first time. So I think we could learn a lot from these companies, these especially the non chain companies, the business owners, their I don't want to call it intestinal fortitude, but their resilience, their heart, their don't give up type attitude, because that, and just now that I'm thinking of it, I think of farmers, because I'm thinking of growing up, and I know a lot of farmers, they struggle depending on what kind of year we had, but year in, year out, I would see these guys, they would go right back out and they start plowing the field, start planting the cotton or peanuts, and they would just keep going, because they're like, hey, I'm not going to give up on this. My family depends on me, so I'm not going to quit.
No, and I worked on a farm for a few years when I was young, and that mentality definitely stuck with me, as some of this can do, this strong resolve, watching those, one of the owner of that farm, I mean, he lived in that property his entire life, and from sun up till sundown for like 80 something years. And then his son the same way. Very strong. And the sad thing is, you watch some of them, the farms dying off, and it's not because of their hard work. It's not because of their hard work ethic. It's not because they didn't show up. It's because the shift in their mind, they didn't make the small mental shift and get geared up for the next, the change in the way things are done with technology and with some things that are coming through. That being said, if you don't equip your mind to combat the futuristic stuff that's happening, like there's life cycles in every business, whether it be farming, in the trucking industry like we're in right now. If you do not, that's the one thing I'd say, the mom and pop shop, the smaller companies, they struggle to adapt with time a little bit more than some of the big box companies, because they have data. They have the ability to utilize the data to make decisions to help weather storms differently, to help weather life cycles of new products coming online, whatever. And that's one thing I would say is the mental piece of not just I'm strong enough, but what things do I not know right now that may be a huge roadblock for me in the future. So if I don't make the shift now, business-wise, or in my mind, the way I do business, what things would put me out of business? And don't be so stuck on the way we've always done it, but think of it from an objective standpoint, that if I want to keep my family farm in operation and business, what may I have to do to have that happen? And I think there's a lot of companies that do go under because they've had this, I'm going to kind of lean on the idea of pride a little bit, to say, is it the pride that's holding them back from making an agnostic, objective decision to help keep their company afloat?
Yeah, I think with pride, some people they'll say, hey, well, that's just the way we've always done it, and that can definitely hurt you. We were supposed to be thinking outside of the box in the military, and I think that's what a lot of people do. They don't stay in that same rut just because it's been done that way for 50 years. Yeah, sometimes if it ain't broke, don't mess with it. It doesn't need to be fixed. But with, like you said, cycles, you have to adapt. You adapt and overcome. And sometimes you got to change a little bit. Put your pride aside and just get on it. Just go. And you may have to weather the storm for a while, but then you're going to see a rainbow. You're going to see the sun come out. Sun will still shine tomorrow. So stay in the fight. That's something that I try to tell my daughter when she's playing soccer. I'm like, hey, you got to stay in the fight. I'm like, don't fight the people, but you know what I mean. Like you gotta stay in there. You got to stay in the fight. So I have to tell myself that with a lot of my own personal issues and whatnot, I've got to stay in the fight. And that, I think, where pride does help a little bit, because I am stubborn as well, and I'm just gonna keep hammering away at it. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to stay in the fight.
And I that's one thing with pride, is understanding identifying that you may have issues, may not have issues. You identify what it is, and then have mechanics in place to be able to, whether it be a business coach, a farm coach, someone else that's also in the industry, like that you can pull to, saying like, hey, I'm noticing like my profit margins, have been significantly reduced this last 3-4 years. Like, and then look at it. Okay, well, is it the weather? Is it, this crazy heat, climate change we've been hearing about? Like what's causing these issues? What's causing these profit margins to decrease over, a wide period of time? And then you look at my industry, the one we're in, trucking right now, you get the idea of people say like, well, I've always done it this way. It's not broke, don't fix it. Well, what kind of mechanics or metrics can you use to say, well, what if we don't change right now? And 5 years from now, what will we maybe be, what kind of issues will we see because we're not changing now? Maybe you don't have to change. But if you had to, how are you able to objectively look at your company and your situation to say, how do I evaluate what I'm doing? Is it because I'm prideful and I don't want to change just because I'm stubborn? Or is it because I have to lean on my strength and my stability and just push through this hard economy right now? So that's my thing is using different objective ways to look at things, to where I'm not always leaning on, well, I've always done it this way, and then you're kind of digging your heels in the ground with, you're doubling down on that mentality. So I don't know, do you have any thoughts of like what you did in the military to adapt, to overcome, to see things more objectively, and all the while leaning on your strength of your perseverance and your intestinal fortitude?
Yeah, so in the military, I guess I just kind of, so I didn't really know what Ranger Regiment was completely about. So a lot of it, I think it was really my stubbornness that helped push me through. And like I mentioned earlier about my dad and seeing all the things that he struggled with in life, but he never gave up. When we had a crappy situation in the military, we just adapted to it. Immediately, you don't freak out. You don't look at, to me, it was like, okay, well, how do we fix this? You have courses of action. I don't look at the I guess the bad side of it, or we're looking at it objectively and saying, hey, how are we going to tackle this problem? I would bring other people in, especially, people that are smarter than me and maybe people that have more experience than me. I relied on others, somebody that may have already gone through that kind of situation. So really staying calm under pressure is the big thing. It's not the end of the world. There is a way out of it. There's a way to, and maybe I don't want to say that's naive or anything like that, but there is a way out. One way or another, there is a way out of the situation. But we obviously want a good outcome.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying you had a process you could rely on. You had others around you that were a support mechanism that you were able to rely on through those scenarios. So when pressure was there, you can rely on a system, knowing the system wasn't going to fail you. You might have micro failures, but in the macro sense, you're able to lean on that, saying, I know that it's tough now. My hand is in a fire, but I know that help is on the way. And because of that, you're able to persevere through those situations.
Exactly, and that reminds me of doing close quarters battle, CQB, clearing rooms and all that stuff. I knew I had several guys that it didn't matter where they were in the stack. I knew that we were going to be good. They're going to cover their sectors. They're going to dig their corners. Everything's like we've already gone through that, and so we had the people, we had the processes down. So having those people there that you can flow with, that you can, work with, that will deal with any complex situation that you encounter in the house. It feels better going in it with somebody else than just by yourself.
No, you bring some great points up here. And I guess going back to business, I think that's one thing that I've had to do recently is start equipping myself with more skill sets and with more people in the business realm that have done this kind of stuff before to help build a process. So I'm not so emotionally attached to each single sale, for instance. Like I got really hung up for a while on like if someone said, nah, it's not for us now, I would take that personally. Mm-hmm. Like I would feel the effect of that. My stomach would hurt. Like I wouldn't sleep as good. I would be stressed out. But when I started looking at things from, objective lens, I would look at the numbers game some. I would look at a lot more of the grand scheme of things, the totality of the circumstances, and rely on that process that I was building. And we're not done yet, but I do know the more knowledge I take in, the more podcasts about business I listen to, the more experts I reach out to, whether it be from marketing, sales, development. As a team put processes in place, the more successful I have been managing stress, managing emotions, and ultimately we've been more successful because of that. And I think that's where going back to some of the people that are, thinking about quitting their business or struggling through something right now, and even not even just business, but anything in general. When you're feeling like you have so much pressure, you can't take it, I would say you've already failed yourself because you're relying only on yourself to get through that. So if you're feeling the pressure is too much, it probably is. And that's all right. Like, own that, understand that. Dude, we're not meant to walk this entire walk by ourselves. So what can you do today to put a process in place? Whether it be, marriage struggles. Like, I'm sucking at marriage right now. Okay, do I need someone else that's been through the same situation? Is it, a family member's got cancer? Well, there's support groups. Doesn't matter what it is. I can't always empathize exactly because I haven't been through everybody's, situation. But I guarantee you there's somebody else that's been through something very similar. There's probably a podcast about it. There's probably 10 books about it. So the mental equipping is something that not everybody is great at doing, and that's all right. You got to start somewhere. So I would just say that if you can start looking at, each part of your life, and if you feel a lot of pressure on the regular, like on a weekly basis, you feel like this is always nagging me. This is always a huge, point of contention in my personal walk, my family walk, whatever. You should probably seek out some kind of resource, whether, it doesn't have to be a counseling session, doesn't have to be another professional, but try to gain some knowledge in that area through some vessel of, podcast, reading about it, whatever it might be. You have to seek out some additional help because you are not strong enough to go at everything yourself.
100%. Absolutely. Strength in numbers. Last story, one of my best friends, his dad, he was a pastor and didn't know the first thing about a ranch, a farm, with cows. And so what did he do? He went to the sale barn where they sell the cows, and he'd go up to the cattle owners, these guys that have 1,000, head of cattle. He would just straight up be like, "Hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm going to start a farm, and, I've got some questions for you." And if one guy was just kind of giving him the cold shoulder, he'd go to the next guy. He didn't stop. He went out and asked, he asked, "Hey, how do I do this? How do I do that?" And he made some really good friends that way. And they a lot of them were like, "Yeah, sure. I'll help you out. You do this, do that, get this equipment, get that equipment." So there are people out there that know a lot more than we do and have gone through this, just like you said. They've gone through these experiences, these trials and tribulations. Ask them. They may actually want somebody to come ask them about it because they want to share their knowledge. And if anybody out there is listening has knowledge, I'm always open. I'm ready to absorb knowledge. So strength in numbers. Strength in numbers.
Yeah, that's definitely, I guess, the line of the day, if you will, is strength in numbers. Do not go at anything necessarily alone. Have somebody to kind of lean back on. That's the cool part about, like you just said. I had a friend reach out to me recently who was a coworker of mine, went through something very similar that was very catastrophic, and I'd gone through the exact same thing a few years ago. So while I can empathize with where he's at, it was even cooler to know that I could be a resource for him. And I put myself out there, and he reached out, and now we're working together on some of this stuff. So it's healing to me, actually, too, to be able to kind of share that experience with him, knowing that it's not done in vain, because I know I'm helping somebody else. So there's another reward that's had there. So I would agree with what Pete just said. They may want to share their story. They may want to reach out or, help you because it's going to be, beneficial for them as well. So I would say don't let your pride get in the way in these kind of conversations and opportunities, as I'll say.
No, absolutely not. Do not let that get in the way. Don't be shy. Ask somebody. And if anybody has any comments, suggestions, or just wants to hit us up, you can hit us up at thedrivingloaded@gmail.com. It's all one word, thedrivingloaded@gmail.com. And I'm actually working on the Facebook page, getting that figured out. I hate Facebook, but yeah, great episode,
dude. They're listening right now. We don't hate it. We're just having problems. Okay.
Oh, excuse me, Mark Zuckerberg or whatever your name is. I love Facebook.
No, it's a good platform right now, right? So yeah, hey, we do appreciate you listening. We do, want more comments, especially in the iTunes store or the podcast, wherever you download that stuff from. Leave some comments, not just give us a star, whether it's 1 or 5, but give us some comments, give us some feedback, and like and subscribe. We definitely would appreciate if you're taking anything from this to subscribe, and it's definitely helping us, kind of climb the charts a little bit. To help maybe give some exposure to somebody else that maybe wouldn't, know about us otherwise. So definitely appreciate your time.
Exactly. Yeah, even if it's a 1 star, tell us why it sucked. I don't care. I have very thick skin. I've developed that over many years in the military. So by all means, don't be bashful. If it sucks, it sucks.
But if you put a 1 star, you better freaking back it up and tell us why.
Yeah, back it up. Don't be afraid. It's all good. I just want to give a shout out to all my Mennonite familia in Texas. So love you guys. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate the feedback. But that's it. We are out of here. See y'all.
Peace.